Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is another Drago Dog Walk Talks. Drago? Drogo. Well, come on. The horsey's left. Not that he understands horse in English. Yeah, I just had a horse and rider down the trail, and he's afraid of horses. And the girl on the horse, like, he's not going to attack the horses. It's like, attack. He'll run away from the horse. He's become a little less fearful of them over the years. So it is the 8th of September. And September and the end of summers turned out to be very monumental. Come on, there are no horses here. Let's go. Come on, down the trail we go. Давай. Иди, нету тут лошадей. Блин. So anyways, you know, I had the theory that the U.S. would be buying not just Russian LNG to resell to the Europeans at a big markup. Нет тут лошадей. Come on, no horses. Let's go. Yeah. But that Nord Stream 2 might get restarted, and they might be buying Russian gas to resell to the Europeans. Well, let's go. That deal is now permanently off the table, or at least it's permanently for the next decade. At maximum, if things get restarted now, Europe has about 4 years of Russian pipeline gas before that's done. If Europe is, and I'll tell you why. Russia signed a deal with China. So Russia signed a deal with China for building Power Siberia 2, which, unlike Power Siberia 1, which came from virgin gas fields, Power Siberia 2 is coming from the Yamal gas fields, which previously fed, that's right, Europe. They fed Europe. Hold up here, I check myself for ticks. The grass is a little high. We've been going. I don't want any tag-alongs. Nope, no ticks. I'm gonna check myself ever so often. Anyways, so and have to watch out for minefields because horses lay a whole lot of mines randomly, obviously. So anyways, as I was saying, this one, the Yamal, used to feed Europe, and Europe has always been trying to screw Gazprom for a long time, the third energy packet, where thanks for building infrastructure, now we're going to pump whoever gas or oil we feel like through your pipes, and you have to agree to it and tell us thank you, and oh yeah, and pay us for it. And other idiotic ideas like this of Europe that's constantly telling Russia, and has been for the last, not just since the SMO, not since even 2014, but quite earlier than that, for the last 20 years, we don't like what you're charging us. We want spot rates, not long-term contracts, because spot rates are cheaper. Nope, spot rates turn out to be about 2.5 to 4 times more expensive. Whoops, for Europe. Yeah, all the smart guys. They're like Tusk, by the way, who helped push that one through. And then, you know, we were going to do anti-monopoly lawsuits against you, blah, blah, blah. We really don't like Gazprom. We don't like Russia. We don't like anything. And then they got what they wanted. Be careful what you wish for, as the saying goes. Europe got what it wanted, and Europe will no longer have to deal with Russia. As I've said more than once, Europe is going to be really screwed when Russia decides it no longer needs Europe. And Russia has decided that, and Russia has left Europe. Europe is not quite smart enough to figure that one out yet. The Europeans are so egotistical. And I've heard this from various European businessmen, and Americans too for that matter, we'll just come back when we need to. Because the Russians are dumb and they won't do anything. They'll accept whatever beads we throw their way and, you know, take us back. Yeah, okay, whatever. Never mind, the Russian companies have filled most of the niches that the Americans and the Europeans held. And it's continuing to accelerate in that deal. But куда ты идешь, пошли? Вперед. And they fail to want to understand that. Not only is the Russian mindset one that we don't want to deal with Europe, period, Europe has lost Russia for at least 2 generations, if not 3. And the longer this goes, the longer the bad aftertaste is going to be held on to. Russians don't like Europe anymore because the masks came off. The mass Russophobia came out for everyone to see. It's going to take a lot for Europeans to culminate any kind of goodwill that they've spent decades building up, well, supposedly building up, and spent less than a couple months destroying with glee and an orgasm of Russophobia. And that was one hell of an orgasm. Europe hasn't sobered up enough yet to get the hangover, but it's starting to, because they still think they can get back in. Well, the Yamal gas field, so this new Power Siberia line is going to run through Mongolia, which is great for Mongolia, because not only is Mongolia going to be getting transit fees, but Mongolia is going to be getting cheap energy. Everything that Europe will lose, Mongolia will gain. And Mongolia has huge amounts of natural resources, not enough population. So, hey, Europeans, you can migrate into Mongolia now and work the mines and work the industry there. Because, you know, it's not going to be in your subcontinent anymore. Well, then the resources are pretty much played out in a lot of parts of Europe anyways, the European subcontinent of the Eurasian continent. But it gets much, much worse for the Europeans once you get past that point and you look at actual industry and energy. So no AI for Europe. France's nuclear is not having a lot of problems because they're actually having to pay not pirate rates of being able to raid their colonies and their empire, which never really disappeared until now. It still hasn't fully disappeared, but a lot of key areas have. They lost the $50 per ton uranium ore. You don't really get that much uranium out of that ton of ore. It's mostly slag. Now they're having to pay the $250 per the going market rate. No longer is, nope, nothing good. We'll just keep hoping it stays that way. No longer will France also get the free gold, basically, from Mali. That's one of the colonies they lost permanently. Mali with 80 big areas for gold mining and no gold reserves, and France without a single gold mine and over 2,000 tons of gold reserves. Yeah, go figure that one. That's what colonialism means. What we're seeing now is what we haven't seen in Europe for 500 years. And that is Europe without anybody's colonies to raid, to pillage and steal resources from. In Europe, in this case, I'm glad to say we are not Europe, even if we own a fourth of Europe. Europe without having the ability to pillage the rest of the world, or parts of the rest of the world, is actually a pretty resource-poor area. And considering almost all new technologies require a lot of energy, Europe doesn't have that either. And thankfully, you know, there's an old saying in Orthodoxy, is that God sends you your enemies to get you to do the things, pashli, to get you to do the things you should have been doing anyways. And so God sent us the European scourge here in this case, and we went east, which we should have done a long, long time ago. And once we've done that, and it's done now, there's no going back to Europe, and there's no need or reason to go back to Europe. Europe has nothing we need. They can't pay the top dollars for resources. Even if we're selling them slightly cheaper to China, you know what? China isn't going to try to regime change us. China isn't going to try to invade us. And China is sure as hell not going to try the third energy packet or other crap like that. And constantly getting on our case about everything. Acting holier than thou. Because that's the difference. And a civilizational difference. Europeans, no matter how poor they are, they always look down their nose at everyone else. Well, everyone else gets sick and tired of that really, really quickly. That gets old. The Europeans never seem to get that. Talk about not getting a hint. Pashli, pashli. So there's that. And we're not going to have to worry about that with the Chinese. You can have honest work with the Chinese. Stable markets, stable alliance. And we already got a deal in that's coming up for running our oil pipelines down to India through Burma from China, from northern China where they're at right now. Which, by the way, since Gazprom produces most of the piping, most of the work, most of the turbine engines to warm it and push the gas along in the pipelines, that's a lot of extra work for the future. Пошли. Нету тут лошадок. Давай. That's a lot of extra work for Russian companies, which is great. Europe's not getting any piece of that market either. It's a European manufacturer, and it couldn't compete anyways, not with what its energy costs now are at. So, one, that's a lot of work and orders for the next 5+ years. Now, Power Siberia, just to China, through Mongolia, from Yamal, which is in the very north of Siberia, that's a 5-year project right there. That's 5 years that a lot of manufacturing plants are going to be booked. And that's a lot of, and that, like I said, Mongolia is going to have a building boom and a manufacturing boom, because with cheap energy, Mongolia is going to go past exporting its raw resource into working its raw resources. And yeah, there's a good migration point for a lot of Europeans who are going to be out of work, poor, unless they're, of course, dead and dying from being in a major war with Russia, which is the other option that obviously the European owner class is aiming for. The owners being the international finance guys. So that's going to be something the Europeans are going to have to choose. But Europe is going to be a dystopian hellhole going forward. They still haven't realized it. They still haven't come to the realization of what they are in for. And their egos won't allow them to do that. It's just physically impossible for them to actually look at reality and understand how screwed they really, really are. But it all gets worse. Because, yes, it does get worse. Let's go down the road of forecasting. So Russia gets this gas pipeline into China. Quite eventually, you can count on Power Siberia 2 and maybe even Power Siberia 3, which is being proposed now, making its way down into China, and from China to Southeast Asia, feeding for the energy needs of Southeast Asia. None of this is going back into Europe. Europe, if it got Gazprom up and running, Nord Stream 2 at least, they'd have 3-4 years right now before all that gas is now bought up for China. And after that, once Power Siberia 2 comes online, sorry bye guys, but all the capacity is now gone. China's booked it, and China frankly is a much better partner than any European nation is. If we're really going to come down to it, even including the Hungarians and Slovaks. Because at the end of the day, the Hungarians and Slovaks still vote in every single sanctions packet there is. They still do. So, at the end of the day, China is still a much better partner than absolutely any European state is. That's just how it is. And all of Europe is going to sink together into a dystopian quagmire. Because let's keep going. So, gas pipeline goes down. Oil pipeline goes down through China and Burma. There'll be at least one branch that'll then branch off to Southeast Asia. So this is going to be a huge, huge energy boom for Southeast Asia, too, within about another 10 years or so, once everything else gets set up. And again, lots and lots of extra work for Russian companies. Yeah, you don't have the ticks, but the damn skeeters. They're trying to eat me alive. If I start sounding irrational and collapse, that's probably because I'm lightheaded from having skeeters sucking me dry of blood. So anyways, what happens next? What happens next is the rail lines. So the ships already are going to India and China. So there's nothing much the U.S. Navy can do about that, as in zero, without declaring war on some nation, trying to destroy their infrastructure. Not that Americans wouldn't do that. 1,000% they would. Hell, you had Fox News hosts screaming for terrorism, for national level terrorism. So what can you say? Hold up. So anyways, so that's already a good chunk of transport traffic that's not going through Singapore. It's not going down those lines. It's going being swampy as hell around here. Try not to step in the big puddles. It's more or less dried out, but still, horses have really dug up this path around here. Probably should turn around and gone the other way. But anyways, intrepidly we march on. Guess I'll be washing the sandals today. So anyways, as I was saying, what happens next? Next come the rail lines. That's right. Next comes China's Road and Belt Initiative from Russia, with Russian manufacturing. And Russia, for those that don't realize it, somewhere between the 4th and 5th largest manufacturing base in the world, and growing rapidly as Europe deindustrializes rapidly in proportion. So those Russian industry products, food products, are going to be going southeast. Other manufactured products from China are already going. Now, just to understand, forever now, there's only been one rail line between Russia and China. That one that was built under Imperial Russia. So now they're going to be building a new rail line. Пошли. They're going to be building... Куда ты? Yeah, this is fun walking here. They put a grader in here, the way the horses have just chewed this path up. You're going to have a new rail line going in already. It's already been planned. Maybe with high-speed rail. And those rail lines are going to be connected to the Chinese network, which is going to get interconnected up to, if everything keeps going the way it's going, toward a peace and stability and union and trade with India. It'll eventually connect to all of that. And not just central, not the Indian subcontinent, but Southeast Asia as well. And that's going to do, well, Singapore is going to be in for a very bad ride. Because thanks to the West, all that shipping traffic, either way, is going to be cut. Europe is dead in the water. It's not going to be exporting much. It's not going to be importing much. It simply can't afford to. Its energy costs are ridiculously high. Meanwhile, Asia is going to be trading amongst themselves. There was some amount of traffic heading to the east to the U.S. until and or when the U.S. Economy collapses from debt and a collapse of the U.S. dollar. Also, so that's one thing. And sooner or later, the U.S. is going to give everybody a haircut because the U.S. dollar is going into crisis. So what do you do? I think what they're planning on doing is with the stable coins to give a haircut, transfer the dollar more off of the electronic greenback and the paper greenback into the crypto greenback. Hold up, let's check to see. I don't have any hitchhikers with me. Bloodletting little infectious hitchhikers. Nope, doesn't look like it. Good. They're not that active this time of year. They're mostly active in late spring, very early summer. At least the ticks here. Now, when I was in North Carolina, those little bastards are active constantly. And no matter how hot it gets. Ticks in Russia, at least this part of Russia, they switch off after the heat gets around 24, 25 degrees. It's too hot for them. They try to get out of the sun, and they're inactive. Like I said, my experience Fort Bragg and places like that, those little bastards are active all year round, just about, unless it was snowing. And they didn't mind sun, sleet, whatever. So anyways, let's see where we're at. Well, the US dollar, so if they go crypto, as it looks like they are, they basically already have a stable, they do have a stable coin. I'm sorry. They do, mosquitoes. They do have a stable coin as is. It's already set up with Ethereum, Torque stable coin, which by the way is not 1-to-1. It's 1 to something like 0.995. So yeah, you're losing half a cent. But now multiply that by a billion. Multiply that by transactions of maybe 100 billion or 1 trillion. And suddenly you're getting a discount, whether you like it or not. That's every time your money goes back and forth on that network. You're getting smacked. So yeah, there's issues right there, right off the bat. But I think once they get into the electronic dollar, the U.S. will default, partially default. It'll be the fifth, sixth U.S. default. The first U.S. default was in 1812, after the U.S. in 1811 tried to annex Canada from the U.K. and failed. Thus the War of 1812, which ended in 1812, started in 1811. Then 1862, when the U.S. started printing greenbacks, minus any backing from gold to pay for the Civil War, that was kind of a failure because you still had a gold currency, and the paper greenback wasn't worth a damn compared to gold, actual gold. And old Lincoln, the tyrant, and he was, if you ever read up on him, he was the most whitewashed tyrant in world history. He just mass-produced those greenbacks, flooding the market. And then in 1932, there was 1931, the U.S. Defaulted on gold bonds, refusing to pay them back in gold coins because it was confiscating all the gold coins inside the U.S. It only gave paper money, which was much less worth anything than the gold. And then in 1967, did the same thing to the silver treasury bills. And then, because we can't stop now, can we? 1971, where the U.S. refused to give foreigners holding American treasury bills, and basically Americans too, gold back for their gold bonds. Only paper money. Money that very, very quickly devalued. I mean, the U.S. pegged to the gold standard before Nixon released it was something like 36.80. In 1 year, it dropped down to 57, 58, somewhere around there, to $1, and just kept on going since then. And artificially kept low, or gold is artificially kept low right now. Now with the St. Petersburg Gold Exchange opening up, we're going to discover what gold's real value is soon enough. And that's going to be very shocking, because I think it's somewhere around 5,000 to 6,000, if not higher, US dollars. That's how weak the US dollar really is. But since it's all the gold basically has been traded right now in the US and UK, they're able to keep a peg and keep gold suppressed in the value of gold. So there's no real discovery of the value of gold. So I think that's what's going to be happening. But the U.S. has resources, and even if the dollar collapses and there's a 30 or 40% or 50% haircut, which the Mar-a-Lago Accords, as Trump keeps thinking about, would actually do that. Basically cut a third to a half off of all the U.S. debt. Just say, sorry, screw you. But here's the thing. In the case of anything looking like a Mar-a-Lago Accord actually coming up, the major holders, China, which still holds, I think, like something like $800, $900 billion, down quite about a third from what it held before. Japan and other countries are just going to dump everything on the market before the U.S. gives them the haircut. The dollar is going to collapse fast. And hyperinflation, real hyperinflation, is going to arrive in the U.S. real quick from that. Because I doubted these countries, I mean, they'd have to be butt-arse stupid to hold on to the U.S. Treasury bills as the U.S. is preparing to give them a massive haircut. There'll be a new discovery of a new floor for the U.S. dollar somewhere in the sub basement. And you think it's bad now, wait till that hyperinflation kicks in. You ain't seen nothing yet. It ain't going to be 15, 20, 30% a year. It'll be like 200, 300, 400% a year or higher. Yeah, that's going to be a whole new reality for Americans too. Or just switch to a whole new currency, but then you don't have reserve currency, and you're going to have to build some serious industry because you're not going to be able to import jack. Nobody's going to give you free things anymore. So there's a little problem. As I said, look up the fact that every single country that became the reserve currency in the world went bankrupt, gutted its own industry, and collapsed economically. And the good times, the 100 years or so of the good times, was followed by hundreds of years of not so good times. The UK is just in the beginning of those hundreds of years of not so good times. US is going to be falling right behind there. Netherlands ain't much better else. Spain never recovered economically. Too much gold and too much reserve currency. Because yes, the Spanish peso was a reserve currency. And so on and so on. It's a disaster. That's why China is not out to become the reserve currency. It's not out to replace the dollar, because they know better than that. We'll just trade on our own national currencies. We don't need to be a reserve currency. Russia doesn't want to be a reserve currency. Go right ahead. Get your own industries. We're not going to do this. We know what's going to happen. Thank you, but no. That's also what happens when you have an elite that actually gives a damn about its people and its country, as opposed to the Western elite that really just doesn't. And they'll be gone living off of their billions in property and other things that won't devaluate like that, while the peasants are starving. Because look, Europe can't even, realistically speaking, Europe can't even devolve into an agrarian economy. Because at the level of the population that Europe has, what, about 500 million people, it can't feed itself. Without Russia, without formerly Eastern Ukraine, now southwestern Russia, Europe can't feed itself. So European sanctions, oh well, screw you too. Europe can't afford to buy our fertilizer to feed itself too. Yields are already going down, prices are going up because, you know, fertilizer. So what happens? Well, first of all, I think a good chunk of the European population will fall off for a simple reason. That Europe is on the edge of massive civil wars. If it doesn't go to war with us and lower its population that way, by people running or people dying, which I'm sure the European leadership is quite aware of and is planning to do, the European population will go down by people running or people dying from multiple civil wars raging all over Europe, as that legacy infrastructure also gets destroyed one way or the other. Yep, it's a dead snake. A couple of them we've got run over in our neighborhood lately. The snakes move pretty fast. There isn't that much traffic here, so it's amazing that they keep getting caught under cars. So anyways, or the crows haven't come around to eat them. So Europe is in a very, very bad place. And it's going to be a long time before people realize this. And minus Russian tourism, which in countries like Spain was over 30% of their income from tourism, and Italy too, you know, minus all of that, yeah, ain't any good times coming. And even agriculture, from the standpoint of energy, agriculture actually takes quite a bit of energy, unless it's you, the cow, and the plow, which may be much of Europe soon. You, the cow, and the plow, because diesel is not that cheap, and without Russian diesel being sold to Europe, it ain't cheap at all. So we're going to be watching Europe in the next 10, 15, 20 years devolve into something closer to Europe in the 1800s. Except that, including multiple civil wars, uprisings, interstate wars, and economic degradation. So it's going to be something between 1800s and post-apocalyptic Europe. The best thing I can say for most Europeans is immigrate. Consider immigration to save your skins. Yep. Consider immigration to save your skins while you can still immigrate. The Russian Far East is booming. There's now positive immigration heading that way. Lots of land, lots of opportunity, lots of industry growing there. And even more so, industry is going to start moving toward in that direction. Because Europe is no longer a marketplace for Russian products because it can't afford them, and doesn't need them anymore because it can't afford them. So, and its own industry is dead, that bought Russian sub-assemblies and processed goods. So more industry will just go toward the east, naturally migrate or open additional plants to feed the booming Asian markets. And yes, we already need professional workers or skilled workers because of a booming economy. So it's going to be even more so. The Far East, Vladivostok Economic Conference we just finished up. Lots of multi-billion-dollar deals signed. A lot more coming. Again, so this is all plus plus. And if you're a smart European, you're definitely looking eastward. Start learning Russian because you're going to need it. Especially if you're if you're a carpenter or or an electric, what have you. Yeah, you're still going to need it to some degree. You can hire somebody because you still have to uphold Russian regulations and laws, but it's not as in your work and standards Gostandarte. But it's not as needed as if you're an engineer. And yes, unless you're an IT engineer, you're going to need to learn Russian because, you know, that's just how it is. You move to a different country, you need to learn the lingua, especially if you're outside of Moscow or St. Petersburg. I'm knowing people, particularly English speakers, they're the worst about it. I could live here for 10 years and I'd be able to barely order a beer in Russian. Like, seriously? Like, you know, I never understood that. Kill me, I couldn't understand that. You know, why would you want to live in a country where you can't even understand if somebody's telling you to go to hell because you don't speak any of the language? And it's one thing if you're an expat, you're here for 2-3 years, you're working at an American or a British or some European company speaking the lingua, you're speaking lingua, and you have nothing, no intentions of sticking around. But if you immigrate, and first of all, if you're immigrant, get that through your head. You're an immigrant. You're not an expat. If you're immigrating, you need to actually immigrate. You need to cut the ties with the past and know that this is the place you're going to be. This is the place you're going to make your new future. Because as long as you keep that ties with the back end and you keep that back door ajar, that hey, maybe I can leave later if things don't work out, you're never going to put 100% in. I'm not going to say 120% because that's impossible. 100% means 100%. You can't go above 100%. Unless you got helpers. But you're not going to put 100% in. You're probably not even going to put 90% in or an 80% in. Because that's just human nature. It's always going to be ishy-wishy. The only way you know, there's a reason when the Mayflower arrived in the U.S., they burned it. And on the other ships that came with it. Idzie сюда. Because everybody had to understand, Drago, stój. Everybody had to understand there is no path back. So you put 110% or 100% in to where you're at now because this is it. As long as people feel that there's an escape hatch, they'll never go full in. That's just human nature. So, anyways, I've babbled enough. Have fun. Have a great day. God bless. And learn Russian. And friends, I'm always bad at this. First, by all means, please subscribe and share. And if you would like to help sponsor me or help the work I'm doing, I'm going to be going down soon, next couple of weeks or so, to help a friend set up a clinic. He's a doctor. I've done put up a couple of his interviews. Lavrov. They're in Russian. They should auto-translate. At least that function used to work. Auto-translate. I don't know what, you know, maybe something's changed on YouTube. But we're heading down there, so we're going to be buying equipment to help set up clinics toward inside the former war zone, combat zone in that area. So there's still people being injured. I mean, there's still drones flying in. The Ukrainian army with their Western sponsoring friends still send missiles in once in a while, just as a harassment fire, I guess, or do more specific targeting. So we're going to go down there. We're going to help set up a clinic. That's the plan. So if you'd like to support me, by all means, I've got crypto wallet for Bitcoin. I think well, the one that's there is for Bitcoin. Any donations will be appreciated, but at the minimum, sign up if you haven't signed up. The button, give a thumbs up, share. So, like I said, I'm very bad at asking, and I'm just bad at that. I'd rather do the information and do the interesting part. But I guess I got to do this too. So, thank you. Cheers.